Hello and welcome back to the channel today. In today's video I'm back in the office here and today I thought I would do a small Lightroom tutorial tip video on one of my favourite tools in Lightroom, and that is the Radial Filter. This tip I've learned from using obviously editing photographs, and I've learned from other photographers, and it's become a very useful tool in my Lightroom workflow over the last few months. Because prior to using this, I would normally make adjustments to photographs using the global sliders. So for example, on this photograph here, taken on the edge of turbid water in the Laser 6 from one of my other videos a few weeks ago, what I would normally do is, before I learned how to use the Radial Filter tool, I would normally jump into Lightroom and start adjusting using these global sliders on the right here. So for example, if I wanted to adjust the exposure, I would slide up and down like this, and obviously these sliders do affect the whole photograph. So there's probably parts that are slightly underexposed and there's parts that are slightly overexposed. And what would that cause is, if you increase the exposure in your photograph, obviously the parts that were overexposed will become more overexposed, and then the parts that maybe become underexposed would be at the normal level. So unfortunately, you would just adjust parts of the photograph that frankly you didn't really need to adjust. So what I found a bit of a revelation is that obviously I would do my normal adjustments using the global sliders just to affect it slightly, and then what I would do is I would use the Radial Filter tool to target certain parts of the image. So for example, in this image here, the fells on the left hand side here are slightly underexposed. They're a bit too dark for my liking. So what I would do is I would grab the Radial Filter tool from the panel here on the right, and then I would literally draw out a part of the image. Now what it does is it quite often uses the last parts, use the last settings that you've used previously. So at the moment this is using an exposure of 2.65 over. So for this, obviously what I'd do is I'd just double click it and reset it. So then what I'd do is, obviously if I just wanted to overexpose ever so slightly, I'd just drag the filter across. Now what you can do is you can use the invert just to select the part that you're wanting to expose. So for this one, I'm just going to go a little bit over. And as you can see, if I just select it on and off, you can see that it's obviously increased the exposure ever so slightly. But what it hasn't done is it hasn't affected the other part of the fells here, which were obviously were at the right exposure, were at a point where I wanted them to be. So all you need to do is just click done on that one, and then what you can do is you can do other filters. So for example, if I wanted to bump up the highlights, I'd just put it on that, and then obviously I can pull these. Now what this is doing is obviously if you select this part here, what it's doing is it's trying to affect the rest of the image. So if you click this show selected mask overlay, you can actually see the parts that it's affecting. So if I click the invert, I can see that it's only affecting this part of the image. So you can toggle that on and off, and as you can see, I'm just bumping up the exposure a little bit, and maybe add a little bit of contrast. See if it'll bring out a bit of detail in the rocks. And the Radial Filter tool is actually great for small local adjustments. So as you can see, the rock obviously in the foreground, the Millennium Stone, and then the fells at the back are slightly more detailed. There's a bit more exposure on them. They are brighter, so it's obviously just slightly affected that area. With the Radial Filter tool, one of the great things about it is that it's always adjustable. If I wanted to go back and select them filters again and maybe adjust them slightly, I can go over to, I'll just select the Radial Filter tool and you'll see two grey dots on the image. And that is generally where you've put the centre of the radial filter. So if I click on that, it highlights the filter again. If you put your mouse over that circle now, it will show you where it's being masked. So you can pull it away, and then you can adjust using the dials and the sliders as you would do before. So as you can see here, if I was to go all the way over to just the illustrator point, you can see that it makes them very dark, and obviously if you slide all the way, it makes them very bright. And obviously it's only affecting that part of the image, which obviously if you was selecting all of them, you won't want to select this side. So that's fine for me. I think that's a good exposure level. So to set the filter in place, you just click done now, and then obviously if I wanted to go to this side and do the same again, and then I'm just going to click invert. And then what you can do is you can also adjust these. So you can, if you want to rotate it, you just put your mouse cursor slightly to the side of one of these squares here. You can affect the bottom or the top. And then if you wanted to move it, you just select the middle part and just move it across. So I'm going to just bump up the exposure slightly on this. And you can adjust these afterwards, so if you want to make it a little bit bigger or smaller. And then there's also another option where you can use this feather selection here, so you can make the selection smaller or bigger depending on what you do. And then what that does is that actually takes the effect of a slider off the side of the image, off the side of the radial filter. So if you look closely here, and I'll just zoom in ever so slightly, just wait for that to come up. As you can see, if you toggle the feather, you'll see that the red mask will actually get bigger and smaller. So what it's doing is it's actually adjusting the way the edge is set. So what you don't want to do is on these type of radial filters is you don't want a solid hard edge, because what would happen then is you would literally, you'd see where the filter is actually affected if you had an hard edge. So what you want to do is with a feather, you want to smooth the edge off so it gradually blends into the image. And yeah, so that's one. I'll leave that there now, and as you can see, it's made the exposure a little bit better on the image. Obviously it's a little bit harsh, and there is room for adjustment, so to speak. But obviously for the purposes of this video, I'm showing you the extremes of what it does, and also you'd spend more time adjusting it, getting it exactly right, and you place these filters in certain places. So for me, it's actually improved my workflow, and it's actually made my images look a bit better, because it's allowed me to target certain parts of the image instead of trying to do a global adjustment on the whole of the image. Yeah, so these radial filters can actually be used for more than exposure. So you can use all the normal tools that you would do in the basic panel. So if you wanted to add a little bit more saturation to the image on that part of the image, you could do so. You could add more texture and clarity. It can be quite useful if you want to add certain things. So for example, if you wanted to, if you had a part of an image that was, like a red phone box or something, and you wanted to just boost the saturation of the phone box slightly, you could use this tool to boost the colour a little bit more instead of affecting all the image. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that little touch onto the radial filter and why I use that filter. There could be a far more detailed video into exactly the exact points of how that tool works. But obviously for the purpose of this video, it would be far longer than I would like to make for this video. It could go into an hour, so this is just a video to introduce the Radial Filter tool, why I use it and how it's improved my workflow. So yes, so if you've enjoyed this video, please leave a subscribe down below. Tell me what you think of this video, and hopefully I will see you again next time.